Breaking the Wall to Rural Climate Action. Jessamyn Fairfield, University of Galway, Ireland.
Climate change in Ireland looks like this. Rising sea levels, intensifying storms, infrastructure that isn't really equipped to cope, and unfortunately a lot of these problems disproportionately affect coastal and island communities. These are places that did the least to contribute to climate change, but are really on the front lines. And unfortunately, they're already used to feeling kind of ignored by policymakers, by government, and even by science engagement projects. So together with scientists, theater makers, and activists, we developed a project called We Built the City on Rock and Coal. Yes, that's a joke. Which is a co-created comedy show that goes out to visit these communities and help empower their voices. We go all over the country, and basically each show is fully improvised based on written suggestions from the audience in the room. Nothing is pre-planned, so there are comedy sketches, songs, and even scientific presentations that are all off the cuff. This means each audience gets the show that they care about on the issues that actually matter to them. We've been all over Ireland over the last couple of years, thanks to support from Creative Ireland and Research Ireland, lots of coastal communities, including 8 offshore islands. And everywhere we go, we are doing these shows, but also citizen science projects and sustainability workshops afterward, to try to scaffold change in the community and support it. It's hard to talk about an improvised show without wanting to give you a sense of what it looks like. So I actually asked the judges to fill in some slips of paper before the show. I don't know what any of these say. And I'm going to try to, here, we'll choose this one. I'm going to try to interpret this using the funniest instrument, the ukulele, and we'll see where we get to. What has you worried about climate change? This says, lack of will by policymakers, misinformation, and lack of climate literacy. That's meaty. That's very meaty, a little bit depressing. So I think a good topic for the blues. Well, I woke up this morning and I felt there was no more will to take action about the things that cause our planet ill. Oh yeah, I've got the misinformation blues. It's too bad. Everyone's trying, but they don't know where to turn. Some of the things that we go try to learn aren't real. It's the misinformation blues. But if we work together, I think we can do better to weather the storm, no matter the weather. That's how we'll beat the misinformation blues. Thank you. Can you believe that was totally improvised? So we actually asked a lot of people this question, right? We asked them, what has you worried about climate change in every community that we went to, and we collected the results together. And a lot of the standard stuff came up, right? Like, people are worried about the environment, people are worried about the apocalypse, me too, and people are worried about future generations and how they'll experience our planet. But actually, by far, the largest category of worry that we found was societal response, right? Are we, as a collective, doing enough? And this is actually good news, because guess what? That's the one we can control, right? That's the one that we can act on. And we found that by going to these communities and just making space to have these conversations, right? We did surveys and we did interviews afterward. We found that both the audience and the performers who were involved in the show felt more comfortable talking about climate change after we visited. They also felt more confident that their actions mattered, that they could do something to mitigate the effects of climate change. And this is super, super important, right? Because building spaces where we can experience that connection, to nature, to climate research, but also to the people in our community that care about these topics is incredibly important. We're actually collecting some of the things that people wrote down and put into our show, and developing it into a policy brief to try to take these stories, not just honor them in the show, but actually feed them up to the highest levels in the Irish government. This is a way of surveying rural communities, but it's a really novel one, and it's one that actually increases empowerment rather than making us feel like we can't do anything. So to me, going out and doing these shows, talking to these communities and connecting them to each other, right? Not just talking about them in isolation. It gives us space to laugh, right? It gives us space to cry a little bit because sometimes we need to. And then once you've had that cathartic experience, you can move forward and then we're ready to act together. Thank you.
Well done. Let's be clear, it was improvised.
It was, yeah.
So, okay, let's start maybe here. Do we have a mic? Where's the mic? Oh.
I probably stole the mic from my ukulele.
Thank you for this wonderful performance and for a great project. Is there anything, you said you would put it together in a book. Is there any real impact that you've already seen, like communities that after, ideally after your show, would stand up together to do something against climate change?
Yeah, well,
examples?
It's interesting, right? Because I think one of the big things that we heard back from communities is that people often felt quite isolated in their communities and caring about these issues. And just by getting all the people in a really small community into a room to talk about climate change, there was this immediate impact. But I think also, sometimes there was a perceived barrier that communities might have. Like in Ireland, there's been a rollout of this recycling initiative that does local sorting of recycling on land. And a lot of the island communities were exempt from it for a while. It was like, oh, no, that's too hard. We don't need to make you do that. One island community figured out how to make it work and get everything installed on their island. And even just going to other islands and being like, no, there actually is an example of how this can work. Can you talk to these people? Like getting the knowledge that already exists, but just connecting it to the right people. That's the main types of impacts that we've been seeing, in addition to behavioral, attitudinal type stuff. Thank you for the question, though.
Yeah.
It's me. That was my question, by the way. So I know that was totally improvised because I didn't talk to you before. And I loved it because it was depressing, yet you made it so cheerful. So come talk to my kids too whenever I need to talk to them. Okay, can you talk us through that process of putting that show in a little community? So you go select a community, then you go to a pub, perhaps, who does the announcement, and then how do you follow up with that community after?
Yeah, so basically every community that we visited, we would be working with a local partner because I think this is the only way for something like this to work, right? You need to know both who is connected to people, like what is the appropriate venue within the community, and also like how to get the word out. I learned that a lot of these island communities, they have an island WhatsApp and everyone is on it. And it's like, you can put posters up wherever. If you're not on the WhatsApp, it's not happening. So just making those connections. And then that also helped us in terms of follow-up, right? To be able to say, like, are there more supports that you need? In some cases, because the project has run for 2 years now, we were able to return to places, or even just to connect them to other things that can support their work, because sometimes we didn't necessarily have the answers, but we knew who to tell them to talk to. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Jessamyn, for improvising under pressure. And secondly, comedy can bring science deniers back into science, right?
Yes.
And you're working with scientists in training them to do this improvisation.
Yes.
I understand.
Yeah.
Can you tell us about what percentage of those trainees end up on stage and give us an example?
Basically everyone who was on this project did end up on stage. So every scientist who wanted to get involved came up and took part in the shows, which if you think about it is a huge challenge as a science communicator, right? It's like, well, what topics can come up? I don't know, we can guess, but we're not really sure. So it was really training people to, be able to access the full breadth of their knowledge without necessarily prepping a little speech. Which is a hard skill, but improv gives you all the tools in order to do that. And not from this project, but from previous projects that I've worked on, improv-based training, like people, once they've had that as science communicators, they can go on and do so much more in other projects, in other parts of their professional lives. It's a really, really empowering skill set. And the other thing too, for these communities, even if they didn't have a strong scientific heritage, some of them had a strong artistic heritage. And so that was something that we found we were able to tap into as well.
All right. Thank you so much for a great presentation and performance. So one question that came up just based on what you just said, about how many scientists have you trained in improv?
So for this project, about 10. Lifetime, I've trained about 400. So okay. This is for me an adaptation and evolution of previous work that I've done. Yeah.
Awesome. The next question I have is, you had mentioned using some of the insights that you've gained from this for policy briefs. So, have you all created any policy briefs yet? Or have any actions come of that?
We have one in progress, basically, is the answer to that. We have one in draft form that we're circulating for a bunch of input from both professionals, people that have done this more than us, but also community members, because we really wanted to make sure that we are honoring the stories that people shared with us, but also sharing them in an actionable way. And it was a challenge with a project like this, right, where one of the things that came up a lot was like, the train system, can we make it better? And I'm like, ooh, like us as a comedy project, that's a little outside of scope. But who can we talk to about that?
Right.
And who can we connect you to make that something that's more likely? And I think what's interesting too is like people are a lot more honest when you talk to them in the context of a comedy show than they might be if you come in and you're a government consultant. So the feedback that we got from people was quite different and hopefully useful.
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.